my friend Henry Jackson, 4th Union Military, class of 1975.
Next, on your feet.
You may be seated. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming out, even though you're underneath duress here. You really got to be here, but I do appreciate you coming out, and I'm hoping that I can impart some wisdom, some knowledge, some understanding to you about what it was like when I first came here, and also kind of my ideas about how things should go in the future. I remember sitting out there just like you guys are right now, and come a long ways. I never would imagine that, I, A, would be standing here, and B, would be a member of the trustee board and also the alumni board for 4th Union Military Academy when I was sitting in your seats. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I was born in 1956. I'm 65 years old now. And so I've seen quite a few things. Back in 1956, when I was born, there were a lot of things that African Americans could not do. You could work in the store, but you couldn't shop there. You had to go in the back of the store. You couldn't necessarily go in the front. In addition to that, there was certain, if you ever, my parents were from North Carolina, and we would go home, so there were certain places that you couldn't stop and eat at. So you had to really know where you could get gas, you really had to know where you could eat at, things of that nature. A black man marrying a white woman, or a white woman marrying a black man was, really unheard of, back then. So my father was the son of a single parent. My grandmother had my father back in 1919. And he grew up, pretty much without a father. So he decided that his way out would be education. So education was very, very important to my family growing up. My mother was a school teacher. So what she decided and he decided, because my mother knew the Baltimore City school system, they thought that I was a bright student, that I had to get out. When I first came to 4th Union, I had no idea that there were no African American students here at this time. And there are a lot of things that did happen, a few things that did happen that were negative, but for every negative experience that I had, believe me, I had 100 positive experiences. When I first got here, I remember my parents, we went up to admissions, and the first 4 people I met were Miss Anderson, Miss Osmond at that time, Miss Beverly Osmond, and also Miss Clark, and we met Colonel Pendergrass at that time. Colonel Pendergrass is a very, very kind man. They're very, very welcoming. He was a very, very even-tempered man, as I remember him. And he guided me through all the steps, guided my parents as far as admissions was concerned. So we're leaving, our parents are going to leave me here, we're walking down the steps, and an African-American gentleman comes up to my dad and he goes, "Well, don't worry about it, we'll look out for him." So my dad looks at him like, "What do you mean look out for him?" He goes, "Well, there's no other black kids here." And my father looked at him and said, "Really?" He said, "Okay." He says, "Well," he looked at my mother and said, "He's here now, so we might as well, go ahead and let him stay." So that was my first day at 4th Union. I walked down the back behind Hatchet Hall the next day. Me and my roommate that I had known really for a couple of years, his name was Ray Shiflett. He actually told me about 4th Union. And we bumped into an elderly black man. And he looked at me and he said, "Son," he says, "do you work here?" And I said, "No, sir." He goes, "Do you go to school here?" And I go, "Yes, sir, I go to school here." Blew his mind. He just couldn't believe it. He couldn't wait to run and tell his wife and his kids that an African-American young man had come to the school. And, I never try to make much out of myself. You know, I just happen to be, you know, in the right place at the right time, you know, for this institution. But I do understand how important it was, because during that time, I guess it was 1968, Martin Luther King had gotten assassinated. Now again, as I said, I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and my home bordered a mall called Mondawmin Mall, it's a shopping center. And I could sit up in my parents' window, and when the riots happened in '68, I saw people running across the shopping center lot with TVs, with coats, and things of that nature. It was an incredibly tumultuous time. There was a lot of pain, a lot of division, a lot of anguish, you know, in the nation at that particular time. And 2 months later, RFK was assassinated. So it's really, really a tough time. So fast forward, it gets to 1970, and my parents are looking for a place for me to go. And they came to Fort Union, they talked to the man. Like I said, they didn't know they weren't the African-American people here. They just assumed they were. And went ahead and signed me up, because my father figured that I would get a great education here. And I got more than a great education here. I met some great friends, and I was able to get an opportunity to be able to live in an environment that was far different from the one that I came from in Baltimore. There were a couple painful things that did happen to me here. I remember Ray and I, we were athletes, so we would go play basketball every day after class, and we'd play football and do something. So we took showers down in the gym. So we take our showers and we come back, and I don't know what you call it now, but we get ready for QT and, you know, study. So there are a couple guys, and I won't mention their names, they're not here to defend themselves, but they decided that Ray and I weren't taking showers. So pulled Ray and I up, made us get in the shower, and made us shower there, you know, in front of them. Most humiliating thing that's probably happened to me ever in my life. But, you know, it did in fact happen. But right after that, a great thing happened. I met a young man named Jose Mara, who became battalion commander at that time. Jose and I are lifelong friends. And Jose is a dentist now, and hopefully, you know, some of you guys will meet him ultimately tonight. But I met Jose, and we really, really became close friends, and I started getting more and more friends. And what I kind of found was that there were a lot of kids here that had never had any experience, had never been around an African American before. I had a friend of mine named Mike Archbell. Mike Archbell said that before he heard that I was coming to the academy, he said, well, if I get me one for a roommate, I'm going to kill him. But then after he got to meet me and got to know me, and we became friends, Mike's one of the dearest friends I've got, you know, really on the planet right now. Because he got to know that I'm just like anybody else, you know. So Mike, I guess, I don't know if he'll be here tonight either, but Mike became a dear friend, and I just started gaining more and more friendships as time went on. And I want to encourage you guys in one aspect of this school. You see that the motto is body, mind, and spirit. When I left here, I could not wait to grow my hair out. I couldn't wait to not have to get up and 7 o'clock in the morning. I just really wanted to do what I wanted to do. But the body, you know about. You're running around, you're getting exercise, you're eating well. The mind, you know about, you're getting an education. But the spiritual aspect of it is something that we kind of take for granted, but it's the most important out of them all. And what I learned as far as the spirit is concerned is that you're getting the discipline that you need in order to be able to succeed in this place. Whether you realize it or not, COVID over the last 2 years has really decimated. Matter of fact, a lot of you probably really are here because your parents recognize the fact that you weren't getting a decent education in the schools that you were at. I work in education in Baltimore, and there are kids that for 2 years didn't even turn on a computer. I mean, and they're still passing. You're probably be in the top 1% as far as education is concerned. And you've got a real leg up on your peers now. So make sure that you take advantage of that. And also the discipline that you've learned here. Those are the steps that are given you in order to make sure that you can become successful. Successful people, it's not luck that these people, are successful. They have certain habits and they do certain things that lead to success. They get up early in the morning. They make sure that all the assignments are done correctly. They make sure that they're turned in on time. They make sure that they're dressed properly. They make sure that they speak properly. All these sorts of things that are instilled in you. And I began to notice that wherever I went after I left Fork Union, that I met with success. People would always ask me to lead this group or lead that group. People would ask me, for example, I'm an elder at my church and I didn't aspire to be an elder, but they asked me to become one. And I couldn't understand, why did people always ask me, to lead certain organizations or to do certain things. And what I found out, or what I figured out was that because of Fork Union Military Academy, I did naturally a lot of the things that lead to success. I said yes sir and no sir. Whenever I dated a young lady, their parents absolutely loved me. And I thought it was because I was so good looking on my, sparkling wit, my charm and whatnot. But what I found out that it was that because, when I told them I had their daughter home on time, I had their daughter home on time. When I showed up, I was 15 minutes early to pick them up. I was dressed properly. I spoke properly. I did all these things naturally. Now, I've got a daughter, and that's the kind of guy I want my daughter to grow up with. So Fork Union Military Academy, you'll get more than just an education here. You get more than just a way in order to be able to develop yourself physically. You're going to gain the things that you need for success. And in closing, I'd also like to let you guys know that I am so proud of each and every one of you, being here. You could be a lot of places. I know some of you, your parents might have sent you here, and you might be upset about it, but son, you're in the right place at the right time. Make sure that you embrace this moment. Make sure that you get the most out of this institution because, as I said, I was sitting where you guys were 50 years ago. And now, I'm standing here before you, African American, going to a school that at the time had no African Americans in it. But over time, things have gotten better at this institution. And also, one thing I learned too is that they say that Black Lives Matter, and that's true. But I learned from Fork Union Military Academy that all lives matter. I have friends, of every single persuasion. So when somebody comes to you and tells you it's just Black Lives that matter, that's not true. It's all lives that matter. Thank you, gentlemen.